I can't believe it's been an entire year since I've been back to the US. Mind blown. So a lot of you know I have been living in South Korea for about 3 years. I had originally planned on living there just for a year, but I ended up staying an extra year because I really liked my time in Korea and I just felt like a year just wasn't enough. So my original plan was from 2018 to 2020, but of course, 2020 happened and things changed. I ended up staying throughout 2020 and halfway of 2021, and although I'm thankful to have gone through some of the pandemic in Korea, I quickly can tell that I was ready to go, and so I left. Do I regret leaving Korea to come back to America? No, I do not regret it. However, I will say that being back in America has been very difficult. I will not lie about that. Reverse culture shock is very real, especially coming back to the States where, there's guns and lack of healthcare and lack of public transportation. Just things that make life a lot easier, I feel like, and safer as well. Just going from, a country that had all of these things to a country that, doesn't have any of these things has definitely been proven to be very difficult. Things are extremely expensive. Like, what? I did not expect America to be this expensive. Another level of culture shock for me. However, that being said, then why did I decide to come back to America? Why do I not regret it? For me personally, I needed a change of pace. I needed to be with something that I was somewhat familiar with. And, just being around other fellow Americans who speak, English and I can have deep, enriching conversations with and just kind of sort of share my ideas and mine. It's just, it just makes sense culturally, you're a lot more connected, and especially being a Black woman too, wanting to be around other Black people, and just, obviously not Black people, just other Americans in general, but it is nicer to be able to have that relatability to people, versus in Korea, it can feel a little bit more isolating. And I think especially in Seoul, because it's a major city, it has that major city rush and isolation and loneliness to it, and so things can feel a lot more superficial. And so the reason why I decided to also live there, why didn't I make it happen long term, is because of those type of things. So first off, the superficialityness of Korea's, it's very much a status-based culture, and so it's more about what schools you went to, how much money you have, your beauty, right? Beauty is huge in Korea. There's a lot of pressure for Koreans to do really well. So for example, in school, a lot of elementary school kids, as a teacher, was constantly studying. And it was to the point where I felt I had a lot more fun than my students. During vacation, I'd be like, hey guys, what did you do during vacation? And then my students would be like, oh teacher, we just studied and went to Hagwon, which is a private institution. And it was just crazy because to me, I'm oh yeah, I went to Busan, I had a really good time. So different. The fact that I'm having more fun than children was just really heartbreaking. For Korea, if you study really well, then you can go to a really good university. If you go to a really good university, you can get a really good job. And so there's this pressure of having to do really well in school, and it becomes really competitive. I like systems that are a little bit more collaborative and working together, but in Korea it's very, very competitive and very, very cutthroat. And of course it's not the fault of Koreans, even Koreans my age, they really hate the system. And so of course kids do, they don't like the system, but at the same time it's just the way it is for them, and so they have to play a part in this role. It's just for me the superficiality of your schooling, if you're in a relationship or not, how much money you have, your beauty standard. To me, it's a very unhealthy way of living. It's very mentally exhausting and draining, hence why things like suicide rates are high, and people are just not satisfied with their lives because they're forced to play roles that they don't want to play in. And so for me, those are things that I really didn't really like about living in Korea long term. Second reason for me is air quality. Definitely I would say the deciding factor for me to be okay, I can't survive in this country. Korea's air quality is one of the worst in the world, which I didn't know that until living there, especially in Seoul. And at the time, 2019 to 2020, my school didn't have air filters, and especially in my room, they started getting air filters, but then they were in every other class except my class, the English class. And so I was literally like sitting there coughing every single day to the point where I was like coughing up blood. And it also really sucked too because the air would be so bad to the point where you can't see like the sun, you can't see clouds, you can't see the stars. And like I'm a really big nature person, so I just like spending time outside. I love like just staring at the clouds. You know, I like being able to go outside and be able to see, you know, life out there. But because the air was so bad, it's just like you just see like cloudiness, like brown, like dirt. So that being said though, in 2021 I really was like, okay, since I'm stuck here, like I might as well try to make it work. But I just felt like, yeah, it just wasn't for me. It's kind of like forcing like the incorrect puzzle piece. Which I do love Korea, deep down in my heart I do love Korea, but I just know like it's not a country for me to like settle in. But that being said, being back in America, I also know like I don't plan on being here long term because America's America and it has a lot of things to go through. There are things that I just don't really feel like it's also a good fit for me. And that's why I do want to explore and see more of the world. But again, like being back here for now, it's totally okay. It's allowed me to do things I've always wanted to do. It's allowed me to like focus a little bit more on myself outside of, you know, just external things that I don't really have to worry about as much. Even though it's been really challenging, I've grown the most from it, I feel like, which is interesting because like, I felt like, oh yeah, traveling for sure like always opens my mind and like I learned so much. But I felt like coming back to America and experiencing reverse culture shock and then like dealing with that has actually like been super like rewarding in a sense of like my personal growth. Maybe even so compared to like traveling. And that could also just be because like by default, I'm naturally like a traveler. And so like traveling isn't necessarily uncomfortable for me because that's something that I just tend to do. Whereas like being back at home and just kind of like experiencing like America, just kind of like not traveling, being a little bit more settled in a sense, has been like more difficult because it's like something that I'm like not used to. And so like I also don't regret it because even though it's been hard, I've learned a lot and I continue to grow as a person, and it still continues to be like extremely challenging. But at the same time, like definitely very thankful to be here. So no, I don't regret leaving Korea. And those are the reasons why I also decided like Korea just isn't for me long term. Thank you so much for watching and thanks for being a part of my life. And I hope to see you in the next video. And remember, life is always meant to be enjoyed. So enjoy your life and don't let anything stop you.